Nice to have you with us as we start hour two. He did a wonderful job for the third or fourth consecutive year now. He knows how to make the game sing. I never thought a long time ago, watching him beat Tony Bennett and Dick Bennett at Droughty Gymnasium, I'd be listening to the next Billy Packer. But that is what I've been doing the last few years on CBS. Only got to get him a regional, and we're all set. He's Steve Lappas, who says hello. Steven, good afternoon. How are you today, pal? Okay?
Good, dog. Thanks for having me on.
Did you enjoy? What's the one thing you've learned most of all, Steve, about doing these games, say from year one now to year? I think this is your third or fourth year doing it. What's the biggest thing you've learned here of doing these games as an analyst? Let me hear.
Try to shut up a little bit more and let the game go.
No, seriously, just to be a little more, be short and concise with remarks.
You know, especially at the end of the game, you know, you've got to be able to. You have to give your insight as an analyst in terms of the strategy, but you also want to let the game go. So it's a fine line. I think at the end of the game, especially, there's a fine line.
End of the game. Now, did you see, were there signs as an ex-coach, you at Nova, you at UMass, were there signs that, did you see any sign at all in a minute or two prior that Nevada had that kind of run in them there? You had the game on Sunday afternoon.
Hey, Chris, I used all my expertise in the world to tell my partner, Andrew Catalan, at the timeout before right after 12, that this game is over. These guys got no chance. Their body language was bad. They had just gotten teed up. I thought Nevada was so dead in the water. The other game was a big comeback too, but I was not as shocked. This game I was shocked because they had no depth. Body language was bad. Looked like they were completely done. And I don't really even know. I think back to the game, and I'm not sure what one thing happened, but it was unbelievable to watch.
All right, now, I didn't see the game until the last couple possessions. Did Cincinnati make a mistake with the foul scenario? I know one of their players fouled out after picked up his fourth foul shortly thereafter. Should Cronin have him sat down? What was your take on strategy at the end of that game?
Well, that's exactly what I said when it happened. There was 5 minutes to go in the game. They were still up 8, and Jaron Cumberland picked up his fourth foul. And I said, he's got to come out for 2 minutes. You got an 8-point lead. You can mess around with this for 2 minutes, get him back in with 3 minutes to go, hopefully still be in control of the game, and then finish it out. Instead, they kept him in the game, and he fouled out in the next 30 seconds. And that really hurt because he was their best player in the tournament. So I thought that was – and, you know, when you coach, it's easy to sit there like where I'm sitting there now and say, hey, this, that. And it's a lot harder to be sitting there on that bench and doing it because I did both. And it's certainly a lot easier where I'm sitting now, but I thought that was a mistake, yes.
You did. Okay. Now, how about their last possession? I know they gave the ball to the little guard, let him do his thing, but they didn't get a shot off on that last possession off the offensive rebound basket by Nevada. What was your take on what Cincinnati – and I think they called a timeout, if I'm not mistaken. What did Cincinnati run?
Let me go back a little bit. There was 47 seconds to go, and they had the ball. And I even said, you know, most college coaches don't go 2 for 1. And sure enough, Mick Cronin went 2 for 1. And I think part of the problem when you go 2 for 1 is if that shot that you want to take in the first 10 seconds of the shot clock is not a good one, you're better off not taking it. And I thought they rushed and forced the first shot when the score was tied. It was tied at that time. So they didn't get a good shot off at that point. Then the last possession of the game, they did get the ball back, so it was a 2 for 1 situation. But, as you said, they couldn't get a shot off. And I think what ultimately did Cincinnati in, they had a great year. They did not have a real point guard. And that point guard, and at the end of the game, somebody's got to be able to create for you. And Kane Broome was stuck with the ball. I mean, he's a nice player, and he's a scorer, but he's small, and he's more of a scorer than a point guard, and he just couldn't create anything. And you're right, that was a terrible last possession, but that's why.
Well, and you did make the point at the time, as I remember now, that you said most college coaches don't like going 2 for 1. The NBA guy does because they're better players. They know what they're doing. The college coach doesn't like going 2 for 1, does he, Stevie?
He doesn't like it for the reason that I said. You're worried that when you tell the kids, listen, we want to get a shot in the first 10 seconds, that they'll take a bad shot rather than don't do it then. You know what I'm saying? I think you're better off not going 2 for 1 if the first shot you're going to take quickly is not a good shot. And I think that's the thing that college coaches fear more than anything else. If they had gotten off a good shot, maybe they would have scored, obviously. They would have gotten that second possession with 10 seconds to go. But instead, they didn't get a good shot off, and I thought that's the mistake that they made, and that's why college coaches don't do it that often.
Well, think about the last 5 minutes. They got their best player fouls out. They give up an offensive rebound basket. They get 2 possessions in the last 30 seconds, and one of the possessions, they don't get a shot off. I mean, Cincinnati, you'll be thinking about this game for 7 months. That's as a 2 seed, and a team, by the way, Steve, and there are a lot of teams like this in the tournament who never win. I mean, Cincinnati never, ever wins a couple of big games in a row, and you saw a perfect example why in the last 5 minutes on Sunday afternoon.
Dog, if you think that loss is going to last in 7 months, hey, I got a couple of me that are going to last. I'm taking to the grave with me. Trust me, that loss is going to the grave with Mick Cronin. He will never, ever forget that one. No question.
Right. Now, I also did not like the foul call against Texas in the last, whatever it was, few seconds when Nevada tied that game up, game you also did in the first round. The officiating has been under fire here, Steve. I'd like to get your thoughts on that, but I don't like that foul call. Let the players play the game out, and I think it was Mbamba, their best player, who fouled out. I hated that call. Down 1, 5 seconds to go. What's your take on that for a second?
It was not a good call. It was definitely, I said it on the air, that's one they easily could have let go. It wasn't like an advantage was gained there. And when Bamba fouled out, that's when the overtime was going to be over, because he was really the entire defense in terms of what he did in the lane for Texas. And the other thing he did was he took a lot of attention away from those guards. That's why those guards, Coleman and Roach, had such good games that day, was because Eric Musselman's game plan was to sag in on the big guy, and those guys got loose. When he was out of there, he didn't have to sag in on anybody anymore, and they were able to do what they needed to do in overtime.
Right, so there we go. Musselman's pretty crazy on that sideline. Lots of weird language, Steve. You okay with that or not?
No, I mean, the guy was happy. You know what I mean? He goes in the locker room. You know, when you coach, you do say things, you know what I mean, that you wouldn't say normally, like in front of your kids and stuff like that, because of the emotion involved. So, yeah, I don't really have a problem with it. I've been there, and I know what it is, and I think that guy was the happiest guy in America when that was going on, and, you know, that's just the way it came out.
I also think, Steve Lappas, of course, the one thing about the tournament that you got to keep an eye on is, you know, sometimes you have the great first weekend, and everybody's all excited, but all the blue bloods get knocked out, or there's there's an upset, guy gets hurt, whatever, and it hurts the rest of the tournament. I'll give you a couple examples. I was really looking forward to Duke, Michigan State. Well, Michigan State loses. Duke is going to bury Syracuse. I was really looking forward to Virginia and Kentucky or Arizona, and obviously we all know what happened to Virginia, and they collapsed. I was really looking forward to Purdue-Villanova. I wanted to see Villanova pushed. I thought Isaac Haas, of course, could do that at 7 foot tall. He fractures his elbow. Sometimes the upset, you know, and obviously you could argue Cincinnati against Xavier would have been a hell of a game. Would they have played that? No, it would have been that's Florida State.
They were different regions.
Yeah, different region. But and then Cincinnati is a 2 seed down the road to sit there and play the winner of Kentucky and Virginia. So sometimes the upset, which makes the first weekend, hurts the rest of the tournament. What's your take on that for a sec?
Well, there's no question. You know, I think everybody likes to see the upset in the first round, but I think, I mean, you even can ask the television people that ultimately they would much rather have Kentucky play Virginia than Kentucky play, you know, or instead of having Loyola Chicago play Nevada, you know what I mean? Have Tennessee in there, have one of these other teams in there. So there's no doubt that when there's upsets in the first round, everybody likes it, but people don't like those matchups that get into the Sweet 16, like you have Nevada and Loyola Chicago. Hey, those guys deserve to be there. There's no doubt about it, but they're not as compelling a matchups as you would have is if you had Kentucky and Virginia or Arizona in there or somebody like that.
All right, let's put Virginia aside because that's a freak game. Let's put them aside. What are you more surprised about with the high seeds? Are you surprised Michigan State lost? Are you surprised Xavier lost? You're surprised Cincinnati got picked off. What, as for those 3 or 4 games I just mentioned, which one surprised you the most?
Michigan State surprised me the most because I thought when the year started that if you told me Michigan State is going to be in the national championship game and win it, I would I think most people agreed with what they had coming back. Miles Bridges comes back. What they had coming in, the size of their team, the point guard play by Cassius Winston. I think everybody thought this team could win the national title. So, I mean, that is obviously as big an upset, and they play Syracuse. And, it's a Syracuse team that basically has 5 guys, and they just could not do anything against them. So there's been a bunch of them, obviously. And you're right. Okay, we'll leave the Virginia out of it. But, Arizona losing early, Michigan State losing that early. There have been a bunch of them. The Cincinnati one surprised me because of the way it evolved, because the game was over. They were down 22 points. I'm not 100% shocked because I saw Nevada live a couple of times this year. They're talented, and they got 2 guys that can go off the dribble and make it. And here's the thing about the tournament, dog. You need guys that can make plays for you off the dribble.
Absolutely.
When everything breaks, all these guys are good coaches. They're going to stop your offense that's set. So it comes down to a guy at the end of the shot clock making something happen off the dribble, and Nevada has 2 of those guys.
Yeah,
they happen to be related, too.
Yeah, I know they do. Yeah, they're coming from NC State. All right, what do you do if you're Bennett after that loss? I mean, do you go back to the drawing board? Do you chalk it up as just one of those things? What are you going to do? Keep on plugging away? We're having a run? I mean, they were flat. They never score. It's almost like the regular season in the conference tournament took so much out of them. UMBC, that league has not won a game, so you can't sit there and tell me that league's a giant killer. I mean, those, Vermont and Albany, those teams do not win games, so you can't give me that the conference picked them off. What do you do if you're Dick Bennett thinking about what happened to you last Friday night?
I mean, you never get over that one. And here's the thing about Tony Bennett. It's different for Tom Izzo. It's, because Tom Izzo's been to the Final Four many times. He's got a national championship, so people will chalk it up and say it was a fluke. It happens, whatever. With Tony, though, the problem is he's never been to the Final Four. He's been to one Elite Eight. People have questioned, like they always do, like they did with me, like they do with Sean Miller. Didn't get to the Final Four. What's wrong with them? And now the questions are just going to be – I've already read about it. Oh, you can't go to the Final Four with this style, which is ridiculous. I think the problem for Tony Bennett is I think he's a product of his own genius. He is such a good coach. I mean, tremendous. He takes these guys that aren't that good, by the way, not that good. I mean, does he have a pro on his team?
No, he does not. No, he does not.
Maybe the kid that got hurt. Maybe. You know what I mean? The kid that got hurt. And look at the year he has. He loses 2 games the whole year. 1 game in the ACC, which is absolutely incredible. And now the expectations rise. I think the problem for Tony Bennett is he's such a great coach. He creates expectations, and his team isn't that good.
Fair. I think there's a lot of truth to that. He only does have the 1 pro in his past. He's only had a pro or 2 once in a while. I'm with you 1,000%. Kentucky seems like they found their rhythm here. I know they got a little break with Buffalo, but Buffalo was dangerous. Davidson couldn't make a shot in the last 5 minutes. They survived that. He moaned and groaned about being sent to Boise. Now he's in great shape here in the South because he's close to home and he's got teams he should beat. And he's got the kid from Canada is tremendous. Those kids are no longer freshmen. I would be absolutely stunned if Kentucky does not end up in San Antonio Final Four. How about that for a sec?
Stunned, absolutely. I mean, this thing couldn't have laid out better. And it was funny because you're right. Cal was complaining because the truth is, when that bracket came out, when they first showed it, I said, "Oh my God, look at this bracket! You got Arizona, you got Virginia, you got Kentucky, you got." I'm like, look at this thing, and look what it became. The first time ever you go to a Sweet 16 without any of the top 4 seeds from a region being there. So yeah, it worked out pretty good for Cal. It pays to have a little luck sometimes. Now he's got to go finish the job, and I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but there's no question. They should be beating Kansas State, and they should be beating, obviously, either Loyola or Nevada in the next game. So I think you laid out pretty good for Cal.
Oh, I sure did. Now, Loyola, Nevada is very, listen, it's a hard game to pick when Vegas has it as a 1-point game for Nevada. I would take Loyola because Nevada should have lost probably twice. Yes, I know Loyola was fortunate, but they were in the game both times. They had a 7-point lead, Tennessee. Obviously, they were right there with Miami. So I think Loyola might win the game against Nevada, but a very tricky game to call. You know both well. Give me a little rundown on that game, this first game tonight.
There's no question that it's a tricky game to call. I think Loyola is a Cincinnati that's not as good as Cincinnati. They're going to play a grind-out style. They're not going to play fast. They're really solid defensively. They don't score a whole lot. But I think Nevada has proven that they are a very explosive team offensively, and they're tough to slow down. And I'm telling you, these Martins are going to be very difficult matchups for Loyola Chicago because they are both 6'7". Loyola Chicago doesn't have wings that match up to these wings. They're both 6'7". They both go off the dribble. And the difference is this. Jordan Caroline, where he has their inside guy, he's only 6'6", 6'7", where he has struggled a little bit against Cincinnati and teams like that have size, he's going to be able to have a field day against Loyola Chicago. I like Nevada in this game. They've been unbelievable. They only play 5 or 6 guys. I just think their talent in this game is better than Loyola's.
Well, fair. All right. And you like Kentucky to win this game by double digits later on, the second game in this bracket?
I do. I think Kentucky wins that game by 10. And, I got to give Bruce Weber credit. They're another, they're not going to go easy. They play in the Big 12. They're not going to be they play Kansas twice a year. They play West Virginia twice a year. They're not going to be intimidated by Kentucky. But I just think Kentucky right now defensively has become so good. And then you get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Kevin Knox. Those two guys can score enough. This team has gotten a lot better. They're playing better in the half court, and that's the kind of game that Bruce Weber's going to try and make it. But, Cal has done a great job with this team. I think they move on by 10.
Yeah, I think so, too. Now, how about the travel for both A&M and the travel for Florida State? I think that hurts them here in the other games tonight in L.A. I mean, A&M played Carolina and Charlotte Sunday, and then they got to play tonight in L.A. That's hard. That's A&M against Michigan. That's not that easy. Florida State I think they played that game in Nashville, right?
Yep, they were with me.
Yeah, they were with you, and they had the game against Xavier, and I wasn't surprised. I saw Xavier blow a game against Providence. They outscore them in the last, whatever it might be, 5 minutes, 18 or 10 minutes, 18-4, and they played tonight in L.A., and they both played Sunday. And while obviously Michigan and Gonzaga played Saturday, and Gonzaga's not too far away, and Michigan, everything else. Is that a factor when I evaluate these two games tonight at all or not?
Yeah, I don't get why these teams that are going to be matched up against each other can't play on the same dates and have the same amount of rest and everything else. So I agree with you. I mean, to go from there to Los Angeles, and if you played Sunday and you got out of there Sunday night, and, you probably didn't go home. You went straight to L.A. probably. So, yeah, I think it is a disadvantage for those teams that played and won on Sunday to go to Los Angeles this week, no doubt. But, this Texas A&M team, people forget in December they were in the top 5 in the country. And they are talented, loaded. They had a couple of suspensions during the year. They went south for a bunch of games, and everybody forgot about them. This team, if somebody told you that this team, if they told you in December this team's making a Final Four, you would not have complained about it or said that that's not going to happen. This team is really good.
Oh, they are. They're physical, big. I mean, they destroyed. And Michigan hasn't played that well, Steve. Let's be honest. I mean, Michigan they didn't play well against Montana. I don't know if that week off. They didn't. They were very lucky to beat Houston. Kid missed 2 free throws, so they would have lost that game. And then a kid made the Hail Mary 3. I mean, Michigan, maybe the week off, obviously with the Big Ten tournament, they have not played well. I would not be surprised. Though the travel's hard, I would not be surprised if Texas A&M won another game tonight. That's a very, very good team.
No question. First of all, they have a lot of size. Those 2 big guys are both pros, Tyler Davis and Rob Williams. They block shots. The question is, are those guys going to be able to chase John Beilein's guys? And that's when if they're not going to overpower Michigan inside and on the glass, then they're going to have all kinds of problems in this game because they're going to be chasing Mo Wagner out by the three-point line. And that's always a hard thing to do for guys that are purely inside players. Do I think Texas A&M is going to win? I do think they're going to win. But John Beilein, one thing about this guy, he has a lot of magic when it comes to March.
He does. Oh, he's a good coach in March and tricky to play for him. Maybe they're due to play a little better game. So, and Florida State Gonzaga, Florida State's always erratic to me, Steve. So I'm going to take Gonzaga in this game. I think they're a little bit more consistent. And Florida State had the great finish against Xavier, but I never completely trust them. So I'll go with the Zags. How about that for a sec?
Florida State, when I saw them live the other day for the first time, I'd seen them on tape a bunch of times. When I sat there at courtside and I saw them on tape, I was like, are you kidding me? These guys are loaded. They are so talented, so big. They look like a pro team. The problem is, as you said, they've been inconsistent this year, especially defensively. But when they turn it on, I'm telling you, that's what they did to Xavier. Xavier was one of the best offensive teams in the country all year. In the last 6 minutes, Xavier could do nothing, zero. So I think these guys are good enough, and I have questions about Gonzaga's guards. Silas Melson and Josh Perkins, yeah, they're good players. They're good, and they have this freshman, Zach Norville, who's good. But I think that this Florida State team, if they turn it on at the right time in this game, I think they can lock Gonzaga up. Now, will they? I don't know, but they certainly are capable.
Wow, and a lot of people were moaning and groaning about the foul calls in that game, the Xavier-Florida State game with McCure here, who got foul trouble and fouled out. He get a bad whistle there on Sunday night or not?
I didn't think so. I thought he stuck his hand in a couple of times where he shouldn't have. And he's a crafty kid. He's a kid that knows how to play. He tries to make all these little moves coming from behind you and swipes the ball. And sometimes, when you do that, you shouldn't be doing it. And I thought he had a couple that he should have just let go. And he tried to make steals and stuff, and it didn't work out. So I don't know if he got a bad whistle. I mean, he's a great player. I'd love to have him on my team any day because he's a real competitor. And he was Xavier's best player, no question.
Yeah, he is a good player, underrated. All right, finally, Steve, everybody wants to see Duke Villanova. I think that's one hell of a Final Four game. I think that's the mammoth game that's left in this tournament. I think you're going to get it, too. Duke, probably a little harder road with Kansas with Purdue's injury. Do you think that game will occur? Do you think either Villanova or Duke will be pressed here? I know Kansas is good. Do you think either Duke or Villanova will be pressed this weekend?
I think Villanova has a tough game tomorrow night. I think West Virginia. Now I'll explain it like this. So West Virginia has tough kids that really defend, kids that have been there before in the NCAA tournament. They've got experience. They've got a shot blocker. I think though Bob Huggins has to adjust his game a little bit for this game because if they're going to come out and just they force 17 turnovers a game. They're not getting Villanova to throw the ball away 17 times, in my opinion. So I think if they adjust a little bit and make it a little bit more of a half-court game, not gamble as much, I think West Virginia has a shot. Now, Villanova is tremendous. Them and Duke have been the two best teams in the tournament. They haven't had a close game yet. The way they're shooting it is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. But you know what? Here's what impressed me about Villanova the most. Last week against Alabama was their defense. Alabama could do nothing in the half-court against Villanova. So if Villanova is going to guard the way they're starting to guard, and Jay has talked about it a lot. They've been inconsistent defensively. But if they guard the way they've been guarding, this team will win it all.
I tell you, Villanova-Duke will be a hell of a game if they get that far. What's your take on Duke beating Syracuse and Kansas?
What are you going to say about Syracuse? They're a pain in the neck. You're going to play zone. You play against a zone for 40 minutes, and you would think, well, okay, at least we know what we're getting coming in. That's true. But Duke's not a great three-point shooting team. Now, Gary Trent's a good shooter, and Grayson Allen's a good shooter, and they have great power inside in terms of getting on the glass. But, Michigan State had 20-some offensive rebounds, and they couldn't win. So, and Michigan State is a pretty good shooting team, and they couldn't make threes. So, this game is going to be a lot closer, I think, than people think.
Wow, do you really? I don't see that.
Well, I think it's going to be closer because of the pace of the game. Syracuse makes you play slow and ugly. And I think that's – and let me tell you this. Those 5 guys that Syracuse puts out there, they're pretty good players. Now, they don't have a lot of them, but the 5 guys they put out there are pretty good players. I think this game's going to be closer than people think.
Wow. All right. You think Duke will beat Kansas?
I think Duke will beat Kansas. I think Duke gets by this game. I think they will beat Kansas. Yes, I do. Kansas, right. They've had a hell of a year.
Now, if it's Duke and Villanova, I won't talk to you next week. If that's the semifinal we get, that's a heavyweight semifinal. Who would you like to win that game?
Wow, that is such a hard. I think Villanova wins the game. I think that first of all, Duke will play zone because that's what they've been playing now, and it's not a great zone. And if you play Villanova zone, and I'm not saying you can't play Villanova zone. Actually, in some ways, it's good because you stop dribble penetration. But Villanova, I think, will torch that zone up. And I think they end up winning. And if they torch the zone and Coach K's got to come out and play man-to-man, then they'll really be in trouble because they can't guard Villanova. Now, could they? And, Amari Spellman, I'm not saying he could guard Wendell Carter, but you know what? The Villanova matchups with the big guys between Pascal and Amari Spellman, is not bad for Wendell. Wendell Carter and Bagley are a little bigger. That's not a bad matchup.
Yeah, I love the game though, Steve. That is the game. That is the game of the tournament from here on in. You could have all the Nevada Loyola games you want. The appointment game on television the next 2 weekends is the Dukies in Villanova. You'd agree with that. There's no game that's going to compare
100%.
to that.
Oh, I can't wait. I would look forward to seeing that in San Antonio.
Are you in favor of reseeding, by the way?
You know, that's a good question. No, I'm not. I like the way the tournament is. You know what I mean? It just if you get lucky and this is who you play, like, you know, you're Kentucky and now you play Kansas State or whatever, that's the way it is. That's the way I don't like reseeding. I think you got a bracket and just run it all the way through.
Good job, Steve. You do a wonderful job, as you know. Great to see you doing such a good job on television. Keep up the good work. Thanks for a few minutes here today. Always appreciate it.
Dog, thanks for having me.
You got it. Steve Lappas, some thoughts on the games. The Steve will rush home tonight, and he'll get that. He won't do the 5:30. I guarantee you. He'll rush home. He'll be on that 5:30. He'll be on that 5:10 train. He wants to settle down. He hasn't been home for a day and a half. Number one, he wants to settle down, eat his pepperoni pie, get a glass of Dewar's out, and he wants to watch that game tonight. He wants to bet it. He wants to watch that 7:07 game. He wants to watch the late games, and he can do anything he wants. The bottom line is, if you want appointment television the next 2 weeks in college football or weekends in college football, you have to go no further than Game 2 on the day after Good Friday. I think it's March 31st. That is the game that you need to watch. Duke, Villanova. That's it. I mean, all right, Steve wants to get all wax poetic on, Kansas State, and he wants to tell us what he knows about West Virginia and Huggins, and he wants to talk about the Syracuse matchup zone. Let him do that. Let Danny Cannell bet, and they can all, they can talk college basketball 1 to 3 every day until the cows come home. They don't have to worry about calls. They talk to each other. But the game of the tournament, without a doubt, is that Duke game with Villanova. Simple as that. Now
that's some great analysis, Chris. No one could have thought of that on their own, huh?
Watch it. Well, I've been on that forever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's really going out there on a limb. Villanova and Duke. Geez, that's some great insight.
Steve is one of those.
You are a clown. You are a complete fraud.
Steve is one of those guys right now who thinks the nation tonight at 7:07 is going to be wrapped up and riveted.
No, I'm not.
To Loyola and Nevada. That's the freshman game. That's the freshman game. The varsity game is Duke and Villanova. Again,
I never would have thought of that. That's amazing.
Steve's not going to look that far ahead. He doesn't know 4
future NBA players and a team that won the national championship 2 years ago, and a number 1 seed.
I think Steve may have thought that Villanova was on the other side of the bracket.
Yeah,
but that is the game of this tournament. That is the game. I mean, Danny Cannell can sit there and bet Florida State, women and men, and get himself all wrapped up in it. Nobody cares. It's Duke and Villanova. Simple as that.
Yeah, well, geez, that's quite a statement. Never would have thought of that. You're right. I'm going to be into Nevada and Loyola Chicago. Absolutely.
I'm sure you will, see.
Sure. I will.
In front of about, 11,000 in Phil?
I don't even think they'll have that many. Well, when Kentucky comes in there, they'll bring in plenty.
In front of I'm sure that's is that at the Mercedes-Benz?
No, it's at the Phillips Arena, I believe.
Oh, they are putting that in the arena?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Didn't you hear the story that the other day that Nevada's bus circled around the arena 10 times because it's sort of hard to figure? It's like attached to a building. So
yes, it is.
So,
I've been there.
So they got lost literally for 30 minutes and they missed some of their availability time.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Oh, they did. I didn't hear that story. I know that. I'm sure Texas A&M got to L.A. late. They had to make sure they got back to College Station and study on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and they probably just got to L.A. late last night. Is that correct?
I doubt it. I think they probably got there 2 days ago. But they have the academic advisors that travel on the road.
Yeah, indeed. Steve, I want match play information, Steve, and tennis. You got a sports bite, and you're on Mad Dog Unleashed.